Hello. Today is... and it is overcast. Muddy skies with a deep orange sunset. I hope you are all having a pleasant evening, enjoying your free time activities.
I wish to share something with you that I've discovered recently.
Paratopic is an hour-long, surreal horror adventure created in 2018 by small dev studio Arbitrary Metric, made up of Jessica Harvey, Lazzie Brown, and Doc Burford. Rendered in a PlayStation 1 reminiscent style, Paratopic is washed over with an eerie, polluted aesthetic in the film of sickly greens and sepias that light its hallways, the abandoned cargo containers littered along its riversides, and perhaps most of all, its powerful soundtrack by Lazzie Brown, aka Bo Chaotica. Paratopic is equal parts liminal spaces, urban exploration, Lynchian surrealism, and Cronenbergian body horror. It rejoices in overt discomfort and confusion through its loosely connected sequence of events. Its story is not linear in sense of time nor character, and by the time the credits roll, and even after multiple playthroughs, you probably won't have a full interpretation of what it all meant. And that may just be the intent. It's a puzzle that's been put together just slightly askew, and it's missing a few pieces just for good measure.
What will you elaborate on that?
No, I won't.
Just as much for sake of my own understanding as for the purpose of this video, I'd ultimately like to break down Paratopic's plot into a chronological sequence, partly based on logical progression and partly through speculation. If you're the hands-on sort, you may want to save this video for later and experience Paratopic for yourself first, maybe even a few times, then reconvene to rub our chins and scratch our heads about it together. Paratopic is available digitally for Windows, iOS, and Linux, as well as on the Nintendo Switch for $5.49. Incarcerated over VHS tapes we were smuggling across the border, our interrogator inquires about viewing the tapes. We don't seem to want him to watch the tapes. He watches the tapes. Now we're in a diner. We load a Magnum while a crow tears away at some roadkill out the window. A camera sits on the table. Over the phone, someone asks us how our hike went. Now we're on the other side of the diner. The man across from us is infatuated with professionalism, emphasizing that we've seen what happened last time, and demands we follow instructions. We're reprimanded for a previous unknown offense. The mysterious contraband tapes are mentioned again. They've been left at our apartment and will be making the delivery across the border. We kick in the door to reveal a man, and we enter an apartment building next. Upstairs, a hidden tape sits behind a bathroom mirror with a note reading, "Almost out." Down the hall, our nosy neighbor says we got a package. On our mattress sits a container with an insignia, looking like a power button topped by a radio tower. Inside, several tapes are stacked.
It's tape, isn't it?
Our nosy neighbor noses in on the stash. She wants another tape because the one we gave her is just static now. She threatens to, I assume, tell the authorities about our friends, so we acquiesce and give her a tape.
Oops.
So these tapes are like drugs. Overdosing apparently turns you into a flower monster. and kills you, probably. Where are we delivering them, then? And for what purpose are they being used? Could it be simple drug trafficking or sick body horror experiments? I don't know. We drive through a dusk-lit city and turn on our 2-station radio for a gibberish talk show or a classical music station.
So, we'll call and see if you're from. Yeah.
These segments go on for a while. Watch carefully. Your box turns into a gun. And back into a box! At this forebodingly unlit gas station, we strike up a conversation with the chill enough store clerk. He offers us some local remedy to help stay awake for our late travels. But aw heck, that thing broke down again. We ask him what book he's reading. It's something about aliens by a guy named Eric. A quick Google of Eric Aliens book brings up one Eric von Däniken, writer of 1968 novel Chariots of the Gods, so maybe that's what he's reading. Eric's also widely criticized for use of pseudo-history and pseudoscience in his writings, plus the dude's got a fraud and embezzlement charge for good measure. So I really want to know what he thinks about aliens. Book aside, our alien conversation takes a turn into the questionable ethics of humanity and classism. We talk about the old Super 16 motel that burnt down, fantasize about waffles, and make up a cover story about buggy driving. Sure love me them dunes. The feeling when your heart skips a beat when you lift off a dune. Just tearing up that sand. The feeling of grit in your teeth when you take off a sick jump. Sure love me them dunes. Now we're parked on the side of the road and our car turned into a truck. We're different characters. We're changing characters. And we got a camera. Is that a red-butted rockfinch? Those are rare, and it's goading us forward with mysterious intent. Check out that old windmill. Check out those radio towers.
Heck yeah.
A concrete mansion nestled in the trees. A bunch of corvids.
Heck yeah.
Freight containers. And that symbol again. And within an old shed.
Heck yeah.
Fiddling with a switchboard and powering up the room, we discover a recording of a man named Dr. Algernon Kane, who introduces us to the power company's project. There's nothing else here for us to do. Back on the surface, we follow a cliffside path before an abrupt transition. Ouch! Back onto the road, where I bump off one of the barriers. So much for the good driver achievement. The sky darkens. We pick up pieces of conversation in the cadence and speech patterns of the talk show hosts.
It's Man, it's cool. It's cool. Now, call to come here and a call. So, we're all let's all go to a call. And, hey, though, got some of that? We'll call. We'll be right back. Meet your work.
just walk in, you will walk back in. I just can't go worry. Walk in and go, this is one house. This is just wow, hey. Is it close enough?
Yeah.
Wow. Of course. It's pretty well.
Yeah, can you hear it?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
We're back in the woods. Further into the valley, cargo is stacked messily along a half-buried railroad track. Security cameras lean lazily on their posts like broken necks. One or two still live and slowly turn to watch us. The mysterious red bird continues to seemingly coax us ahead, and it seems clear we've come here with intentions of exposing the power company to the world. Why stop now? In the distance, a dark figure looms. As we approach, our camera feed scrambles, as though corrupted by a powerful radio wave. Just as we come close enough to get a better look, the figure disappears and attacks us from behind. Back on our night drive, the road continues deeper into dead farmlands. Skeletons of barns and silos dot the landscape. The gas station again. Outside, our car fills up while the dark figure watches us. The store clerk asks who we're traveling with. Sparks up some conversation about the local attractions. A ball of twine, milk products and accessories.
Dang it, Bobby.
Most interesting of all, he mentions a ghost carnival. But I didn't talk to him about that, so instead we discussed a museum where artifacts from the old electrical company have been donated by folks poking around in the woods. Just like we were doing a few minutes ago before we probably died.
I'm gonna kick your ass.
Gas station man says these objects do weird stuff, but won't elaborate further. He says 14 years ago something happened, and the company shut down, hurting local businesses. Maybe that's why they can only afford to light the register. Yo, who ordered murder? This poor fella seems to have been hoarding tapes. The traces we were instructed to bring the guy on the phone. Well, it couldn't hurt to watch just one. Well, it couldn't hurt to... In the forest, we retrace our steps from during our nature photography hike. The creature clearly didn't like our photography because we encounter ourselves from earlier in the game, skinned and tied to a broken post. The camera lying on the forest floor. It's a free camera, so we pick it up and call to report the dead body, remaining anonymous.
Well, what would you go? Would you ring? No? No? No?
We see the power company's insignia up on the wall, and the last security camera turns on its post to stare at us. It's a little all over the place, and your final impression might just be a big, huh? But don't worry, we're gonna go through it all, figure out who these characters are, and by the end you'll be saying, huh? Huh? At the end of each playthrough, you get rewarded with achievements based on your actions. There are 20 achievements total to clue you in that there's more to see, which helps to catch the missable moments in later playthroughs. There's also a music player provided for easy listening and existential dread, plus 20 minutes of unbroken radio station goodness. So that's Paratopic. I promised to unjumble this fever dream, and we have all the cards on the table now. For those curious to see the full game in sequence, I plan to upload a separate full playthrough video, edited with my chronological interpretation of events, so look out for that in the description. While I'm at it, one last thing. Please let me know what you think. This is my first try at this new format, and it's a bit of a weird one to start with, but I'd love to know how I can improve in the future. So if you have suggestions, recommendations, I am all ears. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it. The hiker enters the site of the power company's old operations, left largely uncleaned and unhidden from wandering eyes, as though it was abandoned in a hurry. Her camera is a convenient cover for nature sightseeing, but her real goal is to capture evidence of what exactly they were up to before shutting down 14 years ago. We're told by the gas station clerk, though not necessarily as the hiker, that others have returned from the forest in the past, collecting strange objects in a local museum. So we can assume she knew as a local herself, or learned of the spot via rumors from people living in the area who had gone previously. Her hike turns up an old bunker with an initiation video for new employees of the power company by Dr. Algernon Kane, possibly the owner or a higher-up in charge of their operations. She also encounters Grisly End by the creature. In my footage, I only know of 2 times the creature appears, once here and again later on at the gas station. Is the creature a product of the power company's projects? An advanced VHS tape mutation? Some mythical forest and gas station deity? Aliens? I don't think there's an explanation. If I missed it sneaking somewhere else though, let me know. Sometime after the hiker's death, the assassin is sent out to clean up suspicious evidence, the camera, and report the body anonymously. Given the active security cameras, the power company itself is likely the employer for this job, capturing the incident on tape and hiring out someone to discreetly take care of the mess. I'm not sure why the assassin doesn't dispose of the body on her own, as dispatching an emergency service to retrieve the body may spark further unwanted investigation by new parties. Regardless, she finds the body, reports it, retrieves the camera, and vacates the area to stop at the diner for the second leg of her job. Back at the diner, the assassin makes a phone call. On the other end, a man checks if she's said her mantra and asks how her hike went. The hike and the camera clue in that this takes place on the assassin's return to the city, and if she has a mantra, she may be in closer with the power company than we thought previously, given some of the cult-like wording of Kane's initiation video. The assassin loads her gun, waits for the diner to empty, and kicks in the door to the back, where an unknown man has a stash of VHS tapes overlooked by the symbol of the power company. She does her work, and picks up a tape, and places it into the VCR. The section repeats, replaying the hit over and over. It's not shown, but if the tape's effect elsewhere has proven anything, this is likely the end of the assassin's journey. Back in the diner, the smuggler is prepped for a new delivery. The tapes have been left at their apartment, and after the assassin's trip, the car has likely been reclaimed by the company for the smuggler to use. They are told to follow instructions because they saw what happened last time, maybe referring to the assassination we just witnessed in the very same diner. They're also scolded for an unnamed mistake. Not a good look. Very unprofessional. Last, they're told not to watch the tapes, for reasons obvious to us by this point. Oops. The smuggler is told they've been given some scraps to share. In other words, some of the tapes may be used if need be, but only if absolutely necessary. This again begs the question, who is receiving the delivery of tapes, and what are they being used for? The neighbor establishes it's like a drug, at least under normal circumstances, but every time we see it in action, it does terrible, probably death-causing things to the user. Anyways, the smuggler just delivers the stuff. It's not their place to ask. Driving the tapes down to the border, the smuggler is caught before they can cross. Detained, with the tapes confiscated, they are interrogated, but only plead with the border guard that he shouldn't watch the tapes. After ignoring the warning, he is transformed. He unfolds and his body is absorbed entirely, and the smuggler is left alone. This is probably what the instructor meant by scraps to share. In case the tapes would be lost, they would dispose of anyone too curious as to check out the contraband evidence. With this, the smuggler's story ends, and we're all out of plot. Well, not entirely. In this final segment, I want to cover the little details, revisiting things we briefly mentioned due to their lack of closure, or adding background info through insight I did not have at the initial time of recording. In the first scene of the game, in the very first line of dialogue, we're told, "You have an enemy, friendo." The first person I think of is the neighbor, given that she threatens us to give her the tape. This one's pretty easy. It's a blend of both the assassin and the smuggler's drives at once. The way that the box of VHS tapes and the Magnum switch locations, if you actually stare at that spot on the passenger seat, they will just blip out of existence with the new item substituting in after a few seconds. So the idea is that both of them are making the same trip. My reasoning for this is two particular lines by the store clerk. First, the first scene, he mentions that you're traveling with somebody. And then in the second scene, it shows us, one, our car, and two, the creature stalking right next to it. The other line of dialogue from the store clerk that carries across both scenes is that you can ask where to get some food. You can ask about a burger joint. And in the second scene, he brings up that you must not be from around those parts. And the reasoning for that is that if you were, you wouldn't need to ask where a burger joint was. So kind of inconsequential, but actually ties the two scenes together. So whoever is in those scenes, it's the same person. As far as who it is, I feel it's ambiguous because there's not actually any identifier that implies one or the other. In all honesty, the gas station kind of feels like this murky, ambiguous, transitional scene that either the smuggler or the assassin could be present at. My logic is that the presence of the man carrying the tapes in the diner is another smuggler unrelated to the events of the game. I considered whether this character is actually the smuggler, returned after his brush with border security, having failed his mission and being terminated by the assassin. But I say the smuggler's story comes last, because his instructor states, "You saw what happened last time," referring to the assassinated man's fate. That's about all I can muster for this one. I feel relatively confident in my interpretation, but I've read a few fellow dives into Paratopic's story that read certain aspects differently from me, so I'm not 100% certain, and I'm more than open to corrections and differing opinions on this strange story. In short, Paratopic is a surreal fever dream which follows 3 stories, each revolving around a mysterious, faceless company and its dangerous legacy in these unnamed border districts. It's a story about drug smuggling, investigation of illicit industry, and assassination, with more than a touch of paranormal encounters. My initial playthroughs were a bit dubious, feeling maybe Paratopic was more about form than function in its story. But after spending some time to ruminate, even though we never get a full picture, it's still a powerful atmospheric journey. And taking the time to dissect it is as interesting as being tossed contextless into its many strange encounters. I hope you enjoyed the weather report. Coming up next, well, it's gonna be stormy weather from here on out. Like a hive of angry wasps, it's liable to overwhelm.